In philosophical and spiritual traditions across time and cultures, this reframing of setbacks as essential parts of the journey is a recurring theme. To the Buddhist, life's inevitable sufferings are not to be feared but embraced as a path to enlightenment. To the Stoic philosopher, hardships are not just moments of struggle but chances to cultivate inner strength and resilience. To the Christian mystic, the crucifixion is not an end but the necessary precursor to resurrection. And to the Sufi, the journey into the dark night of the soul is the only way to truly reach divine union. It is this sacred reframing of setbacks that marks the beginning of the spiritually chosen's epic comeback. They understand that setbacks are not interruptions of their spiritual path, but integral components of it. The setback is the crucible in which the soul is tested, purified, and prepared for its next phase of evolution. From a philosophical standpoint, human beings have long grappled with the question of suffering. Why do we suffer? What purpose, if any, does suffering serve? The existentialists of the 20th century, such as Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, famously declared that life is inherently absurd, full of suffering, and without any inherent meaning. Sartre believed that human beings are condemned to be free, meaning that we are thrust into a world without a clear purpose and must create our own meaning amidst the chaos. For Sartre and Camus, setbacks are inevitable because life is fundamentally unpredictable and indifferent. However, the spiritually chosen reject the notion of life as meaningless suffering. Instead, they see setbacks as the universe's way of guiding them toward a deeper understanding of themselves and the divine. In this sense, setbacks are not arbitrary, they are purposeful. This perspective aligns more closely with Eastern philosophies like Buddhism, where suffering, dukkha, is seen as an inherent part of life, but also as a doorway to enlightenment. The Buddha's Four Noble Truths begin with the acknowledgement that life is filled with suffering. But unlike the existentialists, the Buddha does not stop there. He teaches that suffering arises from our attachments and desires, and that the way to transcend suffering is through the Eightfold Path, a spiritual practice that leads to liberation from the cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. For the spiritually chosen, setbacks are moments where their attachments are revealed. Attachments to ego, to outcomes, to identities. And through these moments, they are given the chance to let go and ascend to higher levels of awareness. Similarly, Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus emphasize the importance of accepting setbacks as part of the natural order of things. Stoicism teaches that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it. Setbacks, for the Stoic, are opportunities to practice virtues like patience, resilience, and wisdom. This resonates deeply with the spiritually chosen, who understand that their response to setbacks is a measure of their spiritual maturity. Across these philosophical frameworks, one can see a common thread. Setbacks are not to be feared or avoided, but embraced as essential aspects of the human experience. Whether through existentialist, Buddhist, or Stoic lenses, suffering and setbacks are reframed as opportunities for growth. This is the foundation upon which the spiritually chosen build their understanding of the setbacks they face. They see them as moments of divine intervention, where the ego's illusion of control is shattered, and the soul is given the chance to rise. To further understand why the spiritually chosen see setbacks as sacred, we must delve into one of the greatest sources of human suffering, the ego. The ego, in both psychological and spiritual terms, is the construct we build around ourselves to navigate the world. It's the I that desires control, recognition, power, and security, while the ego serves a functional role in everyday life, helping us define boundaries and form a personal identity. It also creates the illusion of separateness. It convinces us that we are isolated beings, cut off from the larger web of life, the universe, and the divine. The spiritually chosen, however, understand that the ego is both a necessary part of human experience and a significant barrier to spiritual evolution. In moments of setback, the ego feels threatened because its carefully constructed sense of self is being challenged. Whether it's a loss of status, a career failure, or a personal relationship breaking down, The ego interprets these setbacks as existential threats. The ego clings to control and resists change, which is why setbacks can often feel like devastating blows. However, from a spiritual perspective, setbacks serve a critical role in loosening the ego's grip on our consciousness. They are moments of ego dissolution, where the false self, rooted in fear, attachment, and control, begins to unravel. This process is deeply painful because the ego is tied to our sense of identity. When we experience a setback, it's not just the external loss we grieve, but the loss of who we thought we were. The notion of the ego and its relationship to suffering is not new. In fact, many of the world's greatest philosophers and spiritual teachers have explored this very dynamic. Sigmund Freud, for example, defined the ego as the mediator between our base desires, the ID, and the moral compass, the superego. Freud believed that much of human anxiety and suffering stems from the ego's struggle to balance these forces. Carl Jung, on the other hand, viewed the ego as only one part of a much larger psychic system. He introduced the concept of the self, which he believed was the totality of the conscious and unconscious mind. For Jung, spiritual growth involved the process of individuation, where the ego becomes integrated with the unconscious aspects of the self. This process often involves confronting the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we deny or repress. In the context of setbacks, the ego's resistance to change is directly tied to the shadow. Setbacks force us to face the parts of ourselves that we would rather avoid: our fears, insecurities, and attachments. The spiritually chosen understand that this confrontation with the shadow is necessary for transformation. They see setbacks as invitations to dive deep into their unconscious, to heal the wounded aspects of their psyche, and to integrate the lessons of the setback into a more holistic sense of self. In Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism and Hinduism, the ego is seen as the root of human suffering because it creates the illusion of separateness. In these traditions, the goal of spiritual practice is to transcend the ego and realize the true nature of the self, which is interconnected with all things. The spiritually chosen know that setbacks are moments where the ego's illusions are stripped away, revealing the deeper truth of their connection to the divine. One of the most profound spiritual teachings on setbacks and ego death comes from the Christian mystic tradition, particularly in the writings of St. John of the Cross. St. John coined the term dark night of the soul to describe the spiritual crisis that often precedes enlightenment. In the dark night, the individual experiences a profound sense of isolation, confusion, and despair as their old sense of self, rooted in the ego, falls away. During this time, it can feel as though God has abandoned them, and everything that once brought comfort and meaning no longer does. However, this period of darkness is not a punishment but a purification. The dark night strips the soul of its attachments to the material world and the ego's desires, preparing it for union with the divine. The setback, in this context, is the necessary precursor to spiritual rebirth. The spiritually chosen understand that their setbacks are akin to a dark night of the soul. They recognize that these moments of profound loss, confusion, or failure are not signs of their inadequacy, but signs that they are being called to a higher level of consciousness. Just as the dark night precedes divine union, so too does the setback precede the epic comeback. The ego must dissolve for the soul to rise. In other mystical traditions, such as Sufism, this same process of ego death is described as annihilation, fana. The Sufi path is one of love and surrender to the divine, but in order to reach divine union, the ego must be completely annihilated. This annihilation is not the end, but the beginning of a deeper relationship with God. The setback, then, is seen as a moment where the self is emptied of its false sense of separateness, allowing the divine to fill the individual with true wisdom, love, and purpose. If we look through the lens of mythology, sacred texts, and spiritual history, it becomes evident that setbacks have always played a pivotal role in the evolution of the soul. From ancient rites of passage to the trials of heroes in myth, setbacks are consistently portrayed as necessary initiations. challenges that test the strength, resolve, and purity of the individual before they can ascend to a higher state of being. One of the most influential works in this area is Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, in which he outlines the monomyth, or the hero's journey. Campbell's work shows that across cultures and time periods, the narrative of the hero's journey follows a similar pattern. The hero begins in the ordinary world, but is soon called to adventure. Along the way, they face trials and tribulations that challenge them to their core. Often, the hero encounters a death of some kind, a symbolic death of the ego or their former identity. Only after this death can the hero be reborn, stronger and more aligned with their purpose. Setbacks in this framework are not just unfortunate occurrences. They are essential stages of the journey. The spiritually chosen recognize this pattern in their own lives. They see their setbacks not as punishments or failures, but as part of their initiation into greater spiritual wisdom. Just as the hero in myth must face the dragon or descend into the underworld, so too must the spiritually chosen face their own trials and setbacks before they can emerge victorious. In many indigenous cultures, rites of passage play a similar role. Young men and women are often required to undergo physically and emotionally challenging experiences, such as vision quests, fasting, or solitude in the wilderness, as part of their initiation into adulthood. These trials are not just about testing endurance. They are about breaking down the individual's reliance on the ego and opening them up to the guidance of the spirit world. Setbacks in life, for the spiritually chosen, are akin to these rites of passage. They are moments where the old self dies, and the new, more spiritually aligned self is born. Throughout mythology, there are countless examples of heroes and gods who must undergo setbacks before they can achieve their destiny. Consider the story of Persephone in Greek mythology. Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, is abducted by Hades and taken to the underworld. Her descent into the underworld is a symbolic setback, a literal fall into darkness. However, this setback is also the key to her transformation. Through her time in the underworld, Persephone becomes the queen of the dead, a powerful figure who bridges the worlds of the living and the dead. In Norse mythology, the god Odin undergoes a profound setback when he sacrifices himself on the world tree, Yggdrasil. He hangs on the tree for 9 days and nights, pierced by his own spear, without food or water. This self-imposed ordeal is a symbolic death, but through it, Odin gains the wisdom of the runes and becomes even more powerful. His setback, his voluntary suffering, is the key to his transformation. The trials of Hercules also serve as examples of setbacks as sacred initiations. Hercules, known for his incredible strength, is forced to complete 12 nearly impossible labors as penance for killing his family in a fit of madness. These labors are setbacks in his quest for redemption, but they are also the means through which he proves his heroism and ultimately ascends to the gods. For the spiritually chosen, setbacks are their own labors, their own trials. Each setback is a chance to demonstrate their spiritual strength, their resilience, and their commitment to their divine purpose. Just as the heroes of myth must face their greatest fears and challenges, so too must the spiritually chosen face their setbacks with courage and faith. In modern psychology, the concept of setbacks as opportunities for growth has gained significant traction. The field of positive psychology has explored how individuals can experience what is known as post-traumatic growth, a phenomenon where people report greater personal development, deeper relationships, and a clearer sense of purpose after going through a major life setback or trauma. Researchers in this field have found that while setbacks can be incredibly painful, they can also serve as catalysts for profound personal growth. This aligns with the spiritual perspective that setbacks are not just disruptions but necessary moments of transformation. The spiritually chosen understand that their setbacks are not simply things to recover from, but are opportunities to deepen their connection to their true selves and the divine. Psychologist Carl Jung's process of individuation speaks to this same dynamic. For Jung, setbacks, especially those that force us to confront our shadow, are integral to the process of becoming whole. Individuation is the process through which a person integrates the unconscious aspects of their psyche with their conscious identity. This often involves facing difficult truths about oneself and undergoing significant psychological challenges. But through this process, the individual becomes more authentic, more in tune with their true nature. In the context of setbacks, Jung would argue that the spiritually chosen are being given an opportunity to integrate the parts of themselves they have previously ignored or rejected. The setback forces them to confront their shadow, to heal old wounds, and to emerge more whole and aligned with their higher purpose. Modern psychology has also explored how the brain responds to setbacks and trauma. The concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt, suggests that setbacks can actually reshape the brain in positive ways. When we face a setback, our brain is forced to rewire itself in response to the new challenges. This rewiring can lead to greater emotional resilience, enhanced problem-solving abilities, and a deeper sense of empathy for others. For the spiritually chosen, this scientific understanding of neuroplasticity reinforces their belief that setbacks are opportunities for growth. They recognize that their brains, like their souls, are capable of transformation. They see their setbacks not just as moments of suffering, but as catalysts for greater psychological and spiritual evolution. In the context of Viktor Frankl's work, particularly in his book Man's Search for Meaning, setbacks take on an even deeper significance. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, argued that human beings can endure almost any suffering if they find meaning in it. He believed that the key to psychological and spiritual resilience lies in our ability to frame our setbacks within a larger narrative of purpose and meaning. For the spiritually chosen, setbacks are moments where they are called to find deeper meaning in their lives. These moments force them to ask the big questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is the universe trying to teach me? In answering these questions, they not only find the strength to overcome their setbacks, but also discover a greater sense of alignment with their spiritual path. The concept of faith, whether in a religious, spiritual, or philosophical context, plays a crucial role in how we navigate setbacks. Faith represents a profound trust in the unseen and often unknown forces that govern our lives. It is the belief that there is a purpose or plan beyond our immediate understanding, and it provides solace during the turbulent times of life's setbacks. Faith can manifest in various forms: belief in a higher power, confidence in the universe's inherent wisdom, or trust in the natural order of things. For the spiritually chosen, faith is not merely a passive state of mind, but an active engagement with the divine or universal forces that shape their existence. Setbacks challenge this faith, pushing individuals to either reaffirm or question their beliefs about the nature of reality and their place within it. In Christianity, the idea of surrendering to God's will is a central theme. The concept of divine providence, that God has a plan for each individual, is deeply embedded in Christian theology. Setbacks are often interpreted as part of God's divine plan, even if their purpose is not immediately apparent. The story of Job in the Bible illustrates this principle powerfully. Job is a wealthy and righteous man who suffers immense loss and hardship. Despite his trials, Job does not curse God, but rather questions the meaning of his suffering. In the end, his faith is rewarded, and he is restored to a greater state of prosperity. Job's story exemplifies the belief that setbacks are tests of faith and trust in God's plan. For the spiritually chosen, setbacks are seen as opportunities to deepen their trust in divine wisdom, even when the reasons behind their struggles are not clear. In Islam, the concept of tawakkul, trust in God, is pivotal. Muslims are taught to trust in Allah's wisdom and to submit to His will. The Quran frequently emphasizes that hardship and ease are both from Allah and that faith involves accepting both with equanimity. The Quran states, "Indeed, with hardship will be ease," Quran 94:6, which reassures believers that challenges and setbacks are temporary and will eventually lead to relief. For Muslims, setbacks are a test of their trust in Allah's plan, and enduring them with patience is seen as a way to strengthen their faith. The The spiritually chosen in Islam understand that setbacks are part of a divine test that, when met with patience and trust, ultimately leads to spiritual growth and reward. In Hinduism, the concept of karma and dharma play significant roles in understanding setbacks. Karma refers to the law of cause and effect, where every action has consequences. Setbacks are often viewed as the results of past actions and are seen as opportunities for learning and growth. Dharma represents one's duty or path, and setbacks can be seen as obstacles that test one's commitment to their dharma. The Bhagavad Gita, a sacred Hindu text, explores these ideas in depth. Krishna advises Arjuna to perform his duty without attachment to the results, emphasizing that true wisdom lies in accepting whatever outcomes arise. For the spiritually chosen, setbacks are understood as part of the cosmic law of karma and dharma, guiding them towards greater understanding and alignment with their spiritual path. The concept of karma is integral to several Eastern religions and offers a profound perspective on setbacks. Karma is often simplified as the idea of what goes around comes around, but it is more accurately understood as a complex interplay of actions, intentions, and their consequences across lifetimes. In Buddhism and Hinduism, setbacks are seen as the result of karma, actions performed in past lives or earlier in this life that have rippling effects. The spiritually chosen interpret setbacks through the lens of karma as opportunities to address unresolved issues, make amends, and learn important spiritual lessons. Rather than viewing setbacks as punishments, they see them as chances to balance past actions and evolve spiritually. In Buddhism, the law of karma is closely related to the concept of dependent origination, which states that all phenomena arise in dependence on conditions and cease when those conditions are no longer present. Setbacks are understood as manifestations of past karma, providing opportunities for purification and growth. The practice of mindfulness and meditation helps individuals to observe their reactions to setbacks and to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and equanimity. In Hinduism, karma is linked to the cycles of samsara, rebirth, and moksha, liberation. Setbacks are viewed as part of the soul's journey through the cycles of rebirth, offering opportunities to resolve past karmic debts and advance towards liberation. The spiritually chosen see setbacks as signs of the ongoing process of karma working itself out, guiding them toward greater spiritual maturity and ultimate freedom. The belief in cosmic intelligence or divine order is a common thread in many spiritual traditions. This perspective holds that the universe operates according to a higher order or intelligence that transcends human understanding. Setbacks, from this viewpoint, are not random or meaningless but are intricately woven into the fabric of the cosmos. In Taoism, the concept of Wu Wei, non-action or effortless action, emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao, the fundamental principle that underlies and unites all things. Setbacks are seen as natural parts of the flow of the Tao, and resisting them disrupts the natural order. The spiritually chosen in Taoism understand that setbacks are opportunities to align more deeply with the Tao and to practice acceptance and surrender to the natural flow of life. In Sufism, the mystical path is characterized by a deep trust in the divine wisdom of the universe. Sufi teachings emphasize tawakkul, trust in God, and fana, the annihilation of the self. Setbacks are viewed as manifestations of God's will and are embraced as opportunities to surrender the ego and deepen one's connection to the divine. The spiritually chosen in Sufism see setbacks as divine gifts that lead to greater spiritual intimacy and understanding. The power of the spiritually chosen lies not just in their ability to overcome, but in their capacity to lift others as they rise. Their story becomes a source of inspiration, showing those around them that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. The spiritually chosen know that setbacks are not the end. They are the turning point, the crucible in which true wisdom and strength are born. And when they rise, they do so with a power that radiates far beyond themselves. Their comeback is not just epic, it is the start of a ripple effect that touches all who witness it. So when the spiritually chosen come back, they come back not as who they were, but as who they are meant to become. Their journey is one of continuous evolution, of rising from every setback stronger, wiser, and more aligned with their divine purpose. This is the epic comeback,